Not many people know about it. It's a great way, like I've said, you can use it to appoint architects, you can find planners, you can find out how complicated things are, you can use it as a learning tool, you can find out how policies are applied and how officers are determining things. It's a really great way of educating yourself. There are lots of different ways to find the best architect or designer for your next project. This video is in the context of trying to get planning permission because I was a planning officer myself. I've been in the planning industry for over 10 years, and in that time I've been able to see what are the best ways of getting planning permission, and the drawings are really key to that. So this video is in that context. My personal view is that the best way of finding an architect, and also the best assurance you have of getting permission, is to actually use the council search function itself. Every council has a database of all the applications that were submitted within their local authority area, and depending on the type of authority, some search engines are better than others, but hopefully you have a good one in your area. But you can search for things like type of development. So if you want to find architects that have done rear extensions, obviously you can just type in rear extension, and you want to look for ones that have been approved. Once you find a list that have been approved, every application will have a link that says view related documents or associated documents or whatever, and in there you'll be able to find the planning drawings, and in there you'll then be able to see, normally it's the bottom right corner of the drawings, you'll find the architectural practice or the designer that drew the drawings. And you can do this for every type of development, obviously. So you have extensions, or you have new builds or new commercial developments, whatever it is you want to do. And if you're trying to find architects, that's the kind of first step. Have a look at the local council's website, find out what's been approved for the type of development that you like, and then also then have a look at those drawings to find out who the designer was for that area. My personal view is to not use general job posting websites. I won't mention any of them, but I tend to find that you get very generic. So a lot of them, they'll have a person on there and will just reply to every project that comes up. There won't be any detail on your site or the nuances of your site or any experience they have with that council. They'll just get back to you and say, yep, we can do it. You'll also find that you'll get a huge variation of price, which is generally based on their level of qualification, but also on their level of misunderstanding the actual proposal. My personal views would be to steer away from that, and a much more assured way of finding a good designer or architect is to use the planning search engine itself. So a key distinction is whether you want an architect or a designer. Now, an architect is someone who is a member of the Architects Registration Board. They've done a whole degree on architecture, whereas a designer doesn't necessarily mean that they can't do the job. Generally, architects are more experienced, but their actual knowledge of planning can be a bit limited. Designers, on the other hand, they may not have the breadth of experience that, say, an architect does, but in terms of what you're trying to do, it may not be necessary. You may find that a designer, through the search that you've just done, you may find that a local designer is prolific in that local area, submits good designs, but they don't have REBA at the end of their name, so it doesn't really necessarily matter. What you're bothered about is getting planning permission. And if you want to learn more about the planning system and how you can use it to unlock the value out of any property, click the link below to learn more. So once you've found your designer or architect, you'll start talking to them and asking them questions. A key one to ask is experience of that local authority, but more specifically their drawings. Ask for copies of their drawings that they have submitted to the council and what site that was for. Because don't forget, in your back pocket, and not many clients will know this, is that you have the planning search engine in your back pocket to check what they've said. So if they show you drawings of something, you can then search that yourself to make sure that what they're giving to you is accurate, because they may just have a packet of excellent drawings that they just push out to clients, say, oh yeah, we did this. A few questions to ask yourself when you're looking at drawings is, does the design look appropriate? Now, does it look in context with the building? Now this is really important, and it's amazing that this still happens in planning departments, but are they hand drawn or are they actually done technically with proper software? You'll be amazed to find that some are still hand drawn. Not too many, but just have a look at that. Do you actually like the drawings? Now, a key part of this is whether you like, you can like the designer, you can like the architect. Do you like and understand the drawings? So don't forget that you need to understand them as a client, but also need to understand them, because ultimately this is going to be submitted as a planning application. It may be done under PD, as we'll get to, but if it's submitted under a planning application, it's going to be under public consultation, and then local residents will be having a look at it. So the quality of drawings is really important, because the better that you understand the drawings, the better the neighbours are going to understand the drawings as well. And that's a really key distinction, because it may help with the level of objection that you get, because if something that's really easy to understand, it's easier to support. If something's unclear and fuzzy and you submit poor applications, then local and specifically if they are kind of quite vocal in the area, will object, and it could harm your chances. So quality of drawings is a really important step. The next step is, once you've seen their drawings, is to test their planning knowledge. Now this takes a bit of confidence, but hopefully these videos in my channel will kind of give you the kind of confidence to work your way around these issues. But you can ask them what policies are relevant to this application. Now normally it really depends on the type of development you're doing, but if you're doing rear extensions, you'll just have a look for the design policies and have a look for the amenity policies and have a look to see if there's any guidance. I've done videos on how you can find this stuff, but that's quite important. Just have that in your knowledge. Just have, if there's a policy that's D1 design, and if they never mention that, that's a red flag straight away. Get an understanding of what their relationship with the council is in terms of their planning. So quite often architects have an approach that the planners, we can't get on with them, it takes forever to get hold of them. But if their response to their relationship with the council and what it's like, if it's more nuanced, if it's more based on experience rather than them just having this kind of blanket approach to planning officers, because to be honest, planning officers take a big bashing, and it takes a confident architect and designer to understand what's going on in that council a bit better, because it's very easy to bash officers, and it may get a thumbs up from you, the client, but having a more nuanced appreciation of what goes on at the council is helpful, because they'll have a relationship with either certain officers or certain managers, or maybe they have an appreciation of how things go through committee. Generally speaking, things go through committee when they get more contentious. So if they have knowledge of that, that's very helpful. Another key one is whether they know their way around permitted development rights. Again, I've done videos on this, but there is a document called the General Permitted Development Order, and in there there's a whole list of types of development that you can do without planning permission. Now it is a planning process, you still need quote unquote permission, but essentially the government is saying you can have permission for this type of development unless XXX. So a good architect who knows their way around the planning system will be very, very aware of permitted development rights, especially if they're a residential designer or architect, because they will have clear understanding of permitted development rights. Because as I said before, planning officers get a lot of bashing, and the best way to get round dealing with a planning officer is to use permitted development rights. So having them fully understand permitted development rights and explaining that clearly to you is really important. And also, like I said, you can have the knowledge in your back pocket again through this channel, or through checking the actual General Permitted Development Order itself to get an understanding of what you can and can't do without planning permission. And if you've been talking to them about what types of development they've got permission for, go and actually have a look at what was built. Not many people do this either, like particularly if you're talking to a local designer or architect, it's easy to do. Go and see what was built. Does it look good? That's a really key appreciation of something. It's more difficult obviously if it's a rear extension and it's in the back garden, but if it's anything else and you can get access to have a look at what they designed. Do you like it? Is the use of materials good? Are the proportions nice? It's just a kind of feeling, and also it gives a sense of whether they got permission is actually buildable. And lastly, don't forget, with all of this, you've got the planning search engine in your back pocket. It really is a rich source of information that not many people know about. So even if you have a permission for a rear extension, say, there may not be much detail on it. For instance, there may just be drawings and a decision notice. That doesn't really give you much insight, but if you look into that a bit deeper, it might do. So first of all, if there's drawings on there with no other revisions, that means that a designer or an architect has designed something and it got permission for it with no revisions requested. That's a very good sign. If there are lots of revisions on there, it means that the officer has raised an issue with the designer or the architects, and they are coming back with revisions to try and resolve it. Now if there's revision after revision after revision, that's kind of an indication that something's not working, and that can be a red flag. Also, you might find that there's an officer's report on there. An officer's report will tell you what these have applied to that site and how they were dealt with. Now that's a really good way of educating yourself before you speak to an architect, because if you're looking at local developments for what you want to do, then you can look at the planning officer's report, have a look what are the relevant policies, and then you can read for yourself how a planning officer has used those policies to come to the decision that they have. It's a really rich source of information. A step further that you can go is to actually look at the site history for that site. Again, if you found a permission that's approved that looks great, that's really good. But also go a little bit further, actually have a look at the planning history for that whole site. You can do that. So you can search by development, you can also search by site. And if that site has a really complicated planning history, if there was a refusal, or if there was an application withdrawn, or if there was an approval for a different type of development and then there was a different permission, and so on and so forth, that kind of gives you an indication of what's going on. It could just be that the owner has made poor decisions, or it could be that the architect submitted something, got refused, and they are trying to rectify that with submitting new applications. So yeah, have a look at that. The planning search engine really is a really rich source of information. Not many people know about it. It's a great way, like I've said, you can use it to appoint architects, you can find planners, you can find out how complicated things are, you can use it as a learning tool, you can find out how policies are applied and how officers are determining things. It's a really great way of educating yourself, and hopefully it will help you find the right architect or designer for your next project.